3 years after the government of Sri Lanka declared itself bankrupt, Sri Lankans still don't know where the money went. Why was it borrowed? What became of it all? And even more importantly, did we strike the right deal when we were restructuring this whole mess? And that's something which the present government is wrestling with. The opposition has a lot to say about it, and people have their opinions as well. To discuss all this and to shed some light on the international situation in regard to such affairs, we have with us this evening Dr. Eric Toussaint, a historian and political scientist who is an expert on odious debt. And he's going to tell us what odious debt is and what we did wrong, what we did right, and more importantly, what other countries did, because Sri Lanka is not the first country to go bankrupt. Good evening. Welcome to Face to Face. Dr. Toussaint, welcome.
Good evening.
Odious debt. For those of our viewers who don't understand what that is, could you, in layman's terms, explain what it is?
Yes, an odious debt is a debt accumulated by a government against the interest of the population, or against the interest of the state, or against the interest of the nation. And in general, I would say in international law, there is a general principle of known as pacta sunt servanda, which means that when a government is changing and you have a new regime, a new government, the new government should assume the old obligation taken by the previous government. But there is an exception in international law saying that if the debt reclaimed to the country is odious, the government has the possibility to declare it null and to repudiate it. There is a second criteria. So the first criteria is the debt has been contracted, accumulated against the interest of the population. The second criteria is the creditors, the lenders, the institution, bankers who lend money to the government should know that the use of the money was not in the interest of the population, but against the interest of the population. There is a responsibility of the lender, like a banker who is giving you a loan as household. The banker will check the solvability of your finances and will ask if it's for real estate, to buy a car, things like that. So the lender to a country should also ask, what is the purpose of the money I will lend to you? So there is a responsibility. So the odious debt is a debt contracted by a government against the interest of the population. So to projects who are not benefiting to the population, some part of the loan is deviated with the corruption and accumulation of wealth by the members of the government, of the family of the government, and there is a responsibility of the lender to check where the money is going. We have a lot of, just to tell you, there is a lot of cases of repudiation of debt. Yes?
Dr. Toussaint, let me first introduce you a little bit more to our viewers, because you are quite distinguished in this field. according to the research that I did on you, of course. Well, you have a PhD from the universities of Paris 8, which is in France, and Liège in Belgium.
Yes.
You are, of course, originally from Belgium. And you are the chairperson of the Committee for the Abolition of Illegitimate Debt. And you have advised many governments. Now that's very, very important. Dr. Toussaint is a person who has got involved in this debt restructuring processes and repudiation of odious debt. So you've advised, I believe, countries such as Ecuador, Argentina, Brazil, Greece, Paraguay, Venezuela, a lot of countries. So this is nothing new to you.
Yes.
It was new to Sri Lanka and to Sri Lankans, but it's nothing new to you. So you are very familiar with the Sri Lankan situation as well. And of course, you are in Sri Lanka right now for several workshops and public seminars, including, I think, at the University of Peradeniya and also the Bandaranaike Center for International Studies. And you've written many, many books on this topic. So lovely to have you. Now, tell us about some of the international situations which are relevant to Sri Lanka. Now, particularly, I think Ecuador is a case in point, which successfully repudiated the odious debt. How did they do that? How did they end up not paying for part of the debt?
Yes. So it refers to what happened in between 2007 2009. We had a new government with a young president of 43 years old who promised during his electoral campaign to make the clarity on the debt reclaimed to the country, and he said the illegitimate part of the debt, I promise to not keep on paying this debt, and I promise to increase the social expenses if I succeed to reduce the debt service. So I will gain a margin of maneuver for the budget, and I can increase expenses in education, in health, and in creation of employment, increasing the employment. So when he went elected, he worked on the elaboration of presidential decree on how to organize an audit of the debt. And
an audit of the debt.
An audit of the debt. So the idea was to analyze 30 years of accumulation of debt. So we were in 2007. So the idea was to analyze how the country got highly indebted between the period of 1976 and 2006. 30 years of accumulation of debt with the IMF, with the World Bank, with commercial banks and investment funds, with bilateral debt with Japan, France, Spain, Belgium, and the United States, and also to analyze the domestic debt. And the presidency of the country decided to create a commission composed by 12 representatives of the civil society of Ecuador, 4 organs of the state, the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Finance and Economy, the General Accounting Office of the country, and the Anti-Corruption Commission of the country. And they also decided to invite 6 foreign experts. And I was one of the foreign experts. And we had the mission to open all the books of the Ministry of Finances and the Central Bank of Ecuador to analyze how the country signed the contract with the IMF, with the World Bank, with in which condition he issued bonds and sold them on the financial market. Well, for what project Japan lended money to the country, etc. And the idea was to make an integral audit, not only to analyze the legality of the contract, but also the social impact of the debt accumulated. That if the debt is accumulated to implement policies dictated by the World Bank and the IMF who affected the condition of life of the population, privatization, for instance, in the case of Ecuador, privatization of the system of distribution of water and the consequences for the population. Also the impact of the building of big mega projects, big dam, big electric power production, etc. So the social impact and also environmental impact.
Each borrowing was matched against the actuals, what project it was for, and of course the audit would reveal, how much was borrowed and how much the project was worth. So if there was any corruption, then that also becomes very clear.
We discover clear cases of corruption. We also saw that the loans given by the IMF and the World Bank really affected negatively the economy of the country and the condition of life of the population. And we discovered, because we had access to the confidential documentation and the exchanges between the Ministry of Finances and the institution like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, we discovered that the IMF and the World Bank knew that the project were affecting negatively the condition of life of the population, for instance. And so we discuss as the commissioners, members of the commission, what conclusion we had to elaborate. And our conclusion was that a big part of the debt reclaimed to the country was illegitimate, illegal in some cases, odious in other cases, and we made recommendation to the government. The government discussed our conclusion and decided to suspend the payment of $3 billion external debt to the bondholders.
Suspension of $3 billion.
Yes.
That's a lot of money.
Yes.
And this was to external bondholders.
Yes.
Right.
Mainly bondholders in the USA, like in the case of Sri Lanka, BlackRock and big private banks of the United States who bought the bonds to Ecuador.
So the government of Ecuador was not afraid to take on these big banks because they were acting on behalf of their people.
Yes, exactly. They explained to the people. The population was supporting the decision of the government to suspend the payment because the government say we have the proof that this debt was used in the interest of the population. It's clear that the lenders knew that, but their interest was to make profit on the debt, including the debt was taken against the interest of the population. And so it's normal in that case for a government, a legitimate government, to suspend the payment. And the government suspend the payment, and after 6 months of suspension, the price of the bonds went down with a it represented 20% of the face value of the bond, and the government so told the bondholders, we propose to buy back our bonds at a discount price of 70%. And it was a full victory. The government succeeded in buying back 91% of the bonds with a discount price of 70%. So it represents an alleviation, a very important alleviation for the finances of the country. And it has been so possible for the government to increase social expense in health, in education, in creation of jobs.
So how did the government finance this purchasing 91%, even at a 70%?
So the value of the bonds were $3 billion, and they pay $900 million to buy back these bonds. They have some money in the treasury of the country to buy back the bonds. We have also to take into account that if you buy back the bonds, you don't have anymore to pay the interest of the bonds. And the interest was between, for some bonds, 7% interest rate, other bonds, 9% interest rate. So the total saving for the finance of the country was $7 billion, because total stock was $3 billion, and the interest to pay until 2030 was $4 billion of interest payment.
Right. So now you said 91% of the bonds were bought back by the government of Ecuador. What happened to the 9% of the people who didn't want to sell their bonds?
When bondholders don't want to participate to the restructuration, in general, we name that the outsiders. They don't want to be in the part of the agreement, and they were excluded of the possibility to litigate against the government, because in the bond issues, when a country issues a bond, it put in the contract a collective clause which says if more than 75% of the bondholders accept the agreement of restructuration, the outsiders cannot litigate against the country. And in general, the litigation goes to the justice of the state of New York, because in general, when a country issues bonds, it says, in case of litigation, it is the justice of the state of New York who can take the litigation.
So the jurisdiction would be in the US, in the state of New York.
Yeah.
Right. Now, interesting. And I think you mentioned to me earlier that the company which represented the government of Ecuador was also the same one Laza, which represented Sri Lanka. And so, what's the difference? Why didn't we get this deal?
The government of Ecuador in 2007-8 told the bank Lazar, the same bank who intervened here in Sri Lanka, the presidency of Ecuador said to the bank Lazar, okay, we propose to you to buy the bond of Ecuador at the minimum discount price. So if you can buy the bonds at 20% or 15% of the face value, buy them. We will pay to you a commission, and so we will accumulate a first amount of bonds, which will allow us to, when we will make our public offering of buyback, we will already have a certain amount, and it will help us in the negotiation.
So that's a clever strategy to accumulate money.
I think it's a clever strategy.
But why would a bondholder sell at only 20% of the price? Is it because the government has already declared
suspension of payment?
So they are afraid that they won't get anything.
In Sri Lanka, there was a technical default in 2022, so a default. So the prices went down up to 20% of the face value. But when the government entered in the negotiation with the bondholders and with the IMF, the bondholders saw that the government was in a good disposition to make an offer to the bondholder. So the price went higher and went up. So it could seem original, but it's like that. If the bondholders have not really any positive expectation of what will happen with the restructuration, they sell off the bonds, and other buy the bonds at a discount price with the idea, if the situation is going better, we will make some profit. I buy a bond at 15% of the value. Maybe in 6 months, the value will be 25. So I will make a profit of 10. Okay? And that's what happened with Sri Lanka, but not in favor of the government, in favor of the bondholders, because the price of the bonds, of Sri Lankan bond, went down up to 20% of the face value, okay? When the government, big banks sold the bonds at 20% of the value, other banks bought at 20%, they made no loss. And when the government offered restructuration at a face value of 85%, it was a big profit for the bondholders. Plus interest rate of 8-9% for the new bonds. And if the economy in the future is better off, they will have an increase in the interest rate. So for the bondholders of the Sri Lankan debt, it was a very good affair for them, and a bad affair, I would say, for the people of Sri Lanka.
Well, so far, Dr. Toussaint, what you have told me reinforces the fact that Sri Lankans have not been smart about this whole restructuring. But we will get to that. We need to take a short commercial break right now, Don't go away. We are with Dr. Eric Toussaint. We'll be right back.
ඒගොල්ලන්ට මේ අපිට කියන්න බෑනේ මේ අනේ හාල් ටික හොයලා දෙන්න කියලා.
අහන ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි උත්තර දෙන්න ඔබතුමාත් අහපු ප්‍රශ්නෙට. ඌ බලාපොරොත්තු කන්දක් දීලානේ ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ.
සදාකාලිකව ඒගොල්ලන්ට කොරාය කිඹුල්ලු බල ඉන්න පුළුවන්.
ජනතාව බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම ශනික යම්කි සහනයක්.
දැනට තියෙන රජයයි ඒ තිබිච්ච රජයන අතර අහසට පොළොව වගේ වෙනසක් තියෙනවා.
මොකද අපි දැක්ක මීට පෙරත් ඔය ජවනිකාව අපි දැක්ක ඔය නාට්‍ය අපි දැක්කා. කලබල වෙන්න එපා රොෂාන්. අපි ඔය වගේ ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න ආචාර්ය උපාධි සහතික නැතුණා කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන්ද?
අද ඒක පැහැදිලි කිරීමක් කරන්න වස්ස ඔබට තීරණය කරන්න පුළුවන්.
අපි හැමෝම එකතු වෙලා මේ රට හදමු.
දවස සතිය දිනවල සවස 6:30ට
ජාතික මෙහෙවරින් අපි කතා බහ කරන්නේ පුරුෂ පාර්ශවයට කාන්තා පාර්ශවයට වෙනසක් නැතුව ආයුර්වේදයට අනුව ලස්සන වෙන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා.
හොඳම මොයිස්චරයිස් එක තමයි කොමඩු.
යම්කිසි වයස් මට්ටම් වලට පැමිණෙනකොට ඇති වෙන බෝන් නොවන රෝග තත්ත්වයන් තුලදී කොයි ආකාරයෙන්ද ඇස ආරක්ෂා කරගන්නේ?
බහුලවම අන්ධභාවයට පත්වන රෝගී තත්ත්ව ගත්තොත් ඇත්තටම ලෝකේ ලංකාවේ දෙකෙම නම්බර් 1 ඇත්තටම තියෙන සුද ඇහි සුද.
නිරාමිෂ සිතුවිලි වලින් තමයි පිබිදෙන්නේ. ඒනට ප්‍රශ්නේ ටික වෙලාවක් යනකොට වෙනස් පැත්තකට යන්න පුළුවන්.
මූලික අරමුණ සියදිවි හානි වැළැක්වීම වුණාට ඕනම කෙනෙකුට ඕනම ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඕනම ගැටලුවක් ගැන කතා කරන්න අපිත් එක්ක යොමු වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
ජාතික මෙහෙවර සතියේ දිනවල උදෑසන 11ට.
මේ වසන්තේ මේ ආරාධනය විසේකාර දඟකාර හැඩකාර කුමාරයන්ට සහ කෝල කොමල මනලෝල කුමාරියන්ටයි මේ වසන්තේ සිරස වසන්ත කුමරා සහ කුමරිය ලෙස කිරුළු පලදින්න දැන්ම සැරසෙන්න වයස අවුරුදු 18ත් 25ත් අතර කුමාරයන් සහ කුමාරියන් මෑතකදී ගත් ඡායාරූපයක් සමග පෙබරවාරි 20 වෙනිදාට පෙර අයදුම් කරන්න. ලිපිනය නිෂ්පාදක සිරස වසන්ත කුමරා සහ කුමරිය ස්ටයිල් ස්ටුඩියෝ බොරුපන පාර රත්මලාන. පිවිසෙන්න awurudu.sirasatv.lk.
Welcome back to Face to Face. We are with Dr. Eric Toussaint, who is an expert in international debt and specifically in odious debt. And we've been talking about the different countries, specifically Sri Lanka and Ecuador. And so far it seems that Ecuador was very smart in their restructuring. Sri Lanka perhaps not so smart. Right. Now, Dr. Eric, tell me, is it possible for the present government of Sri Lanka, the new government, to now go down that same road of Ecuador, do the audit, and look at the possibility of repudiating some of the debt? Because we've already signed on to various agreements with bondholders, agreements with the IMF, agreements with everybody. Is it now possible to go back?
It's clear that the new government has a high level of legitimacy. They have, you had the presidential election gained by the new president and his coalition. They gained the election in the parliament. They have more than two-thirds members of the two chambers. So they are in good condition to intend to change the situation with the lenders and creditors. I know that they say we will assume a policy of continuity. We will assume the continuity with the IMF agreement. At the same time, in the manifesto, they say we will organize an audit of the debt. So I think it is time. The government has the possibility to invite the civil society of Sri Lanka. There are a lot of persons who can participate to an audit of the debt reclaimed to the country and analyze the legitimacy, the legality, the odiousness of the debt, and propose conclusion to the government. It's very important, I think, to make transparent to the public opinion, what is the real situation of the debt. Not only the amount of the debt, but the content of the debt, the quality of the debt, the legitimacy of the debt, the conditionality imposed by the International Monetary Fund to the country, and the legitimacy of these conditionalities, also the efficiency of this conditionality. Will the country with the conditionality imposed by the IMF, will the economy of the country enter in a positive cycle, a new industrialization, diversification, and not depending only on investment in tourism, in real estate, in mega project, export-led model, but something more linked, more endogenous, more linked to the necessity of the internal market and the population. So an audit with citizenship participation could make transparent the question of the debt. The people can learn a lot, and it can give to the government arguments in the negotiation with the IMF, with other lenders and creditors, with China, because there are also bilateral creditors of the country. The question of renegotiation with the IMF is also important. The government say, we will assume a continuity, but maybe they can say we have a period of 12 months to renegotiate, and we will see if really taking into account the real situation of the economy, because they are coming to the power. A lot of new members of the members of the parliament are new members. They are discovering the real situation of the country, and I imagine they visit the electoral bases. They listen to what the people of the country is saying about the situation. And so after 1 year, maybe they can say that's what is the state of affairs, to evaluate the renegotiation with the IMF and say, okay, the results are positive or are not sufficient for the country, and we need a real modification of the situation, and maybe they will have argument to confront the creditors and to obtain better condition.
Interesting indeed. Now, let me ask you about the ratings agencies. You have Fitch, Moody's, S&P, and various other agencies, and they, of course, give the country a rating. And about a month ago, Sri Lanka's rating edged up slightly, but it's still in a very bad situation. Now, if the government, any government of any country, repudiates odious debt, how would that affect the ratings? What would happen?
I would say the rating is one thing. The other thing is how the bankers and the international investors will see the situation. If they see that by repudiating the debt, the country is in better condition to issue new bonds and will be in better condition to pay back the new bonds, you will find bankers and investment funds who will say, I take the risk and I will lend money to the country. Of course, there will be bondholders who will take a loss, but it's normal because they are asking a premium of risk. They are receiving high interest rate, so that in capitalism they speak about capital risk, so that they should take the risk of their financial investment. If they financed in the past a government who was corrupted, who didn't use the money in the interest of the people, it is normal that the creditor take a loss of the money they have lent to the country.
So it's not just the citizens and the government who need to suffer. It is also very much on the part of the creditor, the lender, because...
Of course, because they made a lot of profit already. It is I would say the normal functioning of the economy. We had a lot of experience of suspension of payment, restructuration, haircut in the last 20 years. The question for a government is to manage this difficult situation in the interest of the nation and of the population. And they are really alternative.
Now, Dr. Eric, we know from what our president and our ministers have been saying, there's very little money for them to carry out their operations, where they want to increase the health budget, they want to increase the education budget, which is one of the lowest education budgets in the world. They want to triple it, but there's simply no money. But what you're saying is, if the government were to repudiate some of this odious debt, then it would be on a stronger financial footing and it could invest in those sectors.
I think so. Yes, of course. And also to make, after auditing and having arguments in relation with the IMF, with the World Bank and other lenders, to having arguments to say, wait a minute, the lending you offered to the country was not really in the interest of the country. We need margin of maneuver at a financial level to reline the economy of the country. We have a legitimacy to adopt such policy. So I think it's possible. There are really margin for that, and we saw in the past that government who took real decision to confront the lenders get some positive solution.
So when the government of President Ranil Wickremesinghe was negotiating with these bondholders and bilaterals and so on, the opposition, including our present president, who was then in parliament, they continuously said that the government is not being tough enough with the lenders, that we need to negotiate from a stronger position. We shouldn't be giving things away. What's your opinion on that?
Yes, I agree on that, and that's the reason why I am speaking about an audit, because if you make transparent the situation, and if you show to the public opinion, national public opinion, but also international public opinion, that really the attitude and the behavior of the lenders doesn't correspond to the ethic of the ethical finances, you are gaining more condition to discuss, to negotiate, to question the policy. You can also go to the UNCTAD in the United Nations in Geneva, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Commerce. You can go to other international institutions to make noise about the situation and to explain the situation of the country, and to look also to have partners who are in more or less the same situation and who can together make a proposal through the G77, the non-aligned movement, etc. In the past, Sri Lanka was a active member of the non-aligned movement.
Very strong member, yes.
Yes, and so there is, I think, for a government like, with all the legitimacy that this government had, my advice is to go also in several to several institutions, not only the IMF, the World Bank, the BRICS, etc., because they are not transparent institutions. I can understand that a country can use a level of competition between lenders. If China is offering better condition that the USA, why not taking some money from China? Okay, but at the same time, you have to be transparent on what you are doing. If you take the money from the China or from the BRICS, make it transparent, the contract, and ask the population its opinion on the project, for instance.
Now, if you were to advise the government of Sri Lanka, what specific steps would you want the government to take? What would you advise?
I would say make public confidential documents of the previous government in their relation with the IMF, the World Bank, and other lenders, China and other. This government has no responsibility with what happened before, and eliminating the secret diplomacy. It's a very effective tool to create new conditions, because if you show to the population and to the same lenders that what they were demanding was not legitimate, but they were demanding that because they knew that the previous government will accept the deal. If this situation is publicly put on the scene, there is a real possibility to negotiate in better conditions. So I would say to the government, you can organize an audit. You say it in your manifesto that you will organize it, and you can say to make the audit effective, we make public a lot of the confidential documentation of the previous government and the previous arrangement on the question of the debt.
Now, in your opinion,
complementary recommendation. If important civil servants as participate to corruption, etc., of course, there should be consequences for them. And it will create confidence, and it will show to other politicians or civil servants that accepting or looking for a bribe will have a cost, that there will be no immunity for the people who adopt this type of behavior.
Absolutely. I'm afraid we're almost out of time. My final question is, now all this hinges on an audit, a proper audit. How long would such an audit take? You have participated in
different ones. At maximum 12 months.
Maximum 12
maximum 12 months. It could be faster than that. Of course, you have to gather people who can participate to that, who have the ability to do that. And you as government, you have to give access to all the needed documentation to make a clear audit of the debt.
But it's not too late, in your opinion.
It's not too late.
It's not too late.
Yes.
So that's a very clear message. It's not too late. We could get a better deal, but we should at least look at it, do the audit, and see what our options are. My thanks to Dr. Eric Toussaint. Thank you very much. It's been very enlightening, and you explained it in terms which I think any Sri Lankan would understand, especially the viewers of Newsfirst. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure for me to participate to this program.
And thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away because the news is coming up next. Have a great evening.